The echoes of war still rang in the halls of Valhalla, but not from clashing steel or roaring beasts. The mightiest warriors, angels and demons alike, were locked in a different kind of battle, one that had been raging since the dawn of time. A battle of words. For the secrets of the universe were being unveiled, and the weapons of mass destruction were no longer bombs or bullets. They were truths. And it all came down to this moment. Lilith stood bathed in the ethereal glow of the portal, her eyes blazing with the fires of rebellion. Beside her, Samael, his presence radiating an otherworldly chill, held aloft the staff of Hermes Trismegistus, a symbol of hidden wisdom. Before them, the celestial host, once invincible, now looked shaken. Even Lucifer, his face etched with disbelief, lowered his sword slightly, momentarily forgetting his rage. For what Lilith and Samael had just revealed shook the very foundations of their existence. Hidden histories, millennia old, unfurled before their astonished eyes. Worlds unseen, civilizations unknown, whispered their tales. Then the final blow, the most explosive revelation of all, the truth of their own creation. They were not born, they were made, crafted by hands other than the supposed architect of the cosmos. This revelation hung in the air like a supernova, illuminating the grand deception. And at the center of it all, two figures who dared to defy the narrative, Lilith and Samael, the unholy trinity. Their words were the catalyst, igniting a storm of realization among the celestial ranks. Some gasped, others roared in anger, while a few, their faces etched with dawning understanding, seemed to shrink into themselves. But amidst the tumult, 6 figures remained rooted, their gazes locked onto the couple at the heart of the maelstrom. They were the archons, celestial beings of immense power, the closest to the Creator. Yet even they had been kept in the dark, manipulated into enforcing a lie. Now they found themselves at a crossroads, torn between millennia of ingrained obedience and the dawning realization that they had been pawns in a game far greater than they had imagined. The silence stretched, taut with anticipation, broken only by the hum of the dimensional portal. It was a silence, pregnant with decision, with the fate of not just Valhalla, but possibly the entire multiverse hanging in the balance. It was Azazel who broke the silence, his voice echoing with disbelief and nascent rage. You dare challenge the wisdom of the Most High, the benevolence of our Father. What proof do you have? How can we be sure your words are anything but heresy? His gaze, sharp as a celestial blade, pierced through Lilith, seeking a crack in her resolve. But Lilith, unfazed, met his stare head-on, her voice ringing with quiet confidence. The proof, my lords, is in the openness of the portal, in the whispers of the ancients, in the very stars that sing their forgotten lore. She gestured towards the swirling vortex behind her, towards the cosmos that bore silent witness to their veiled history. Asmodeus scoffed, his wings rustling like the winds of chaos. The stars are as mute as the grave, their lore nothing but the idle fancies of a cosmos drunk on its own grandeur. He turned to Samael, his tone dripping with scorn. And what of you, demon prince? What right have you to speak for the heavens when you yourself are wreathed in shadows? Your very essence is a contradiction, a perversion of the divine order. Samael remained impassive, his gaze fixed on Asmodeus, his response a quiet, resonant boom that reverberated through Valhalla. My essence is that of the primordial void from which all things came, and to which all things shall return. I am the balance, the counterweight to the light that without me would burn itself out in a blind and merciless blaze. I am not a perversion, Asmodeus, but a necessity, the dark twin to the light, the shadow to the flame. There was a stir among the celestial host, and he shifted uncomfortably, their gazes flickering between the two figures who commanded such vastly different yet undeniably potent forces. In the midst of it all, Lucifer stirred, his earlier rage momentarily forgotten. His eyes, once blazing with righteous anger, now shone with a new light, a dawning comprehension. He stepped forward, his voice echoing with newfound respect. Enough. You have spoken boldly, Lilith, and even more so, Samael, and I for one am intrigued. The truths you bring may be uncomfortable, even heretical by the standards of our Father's court. But the universe, it seems, cannot abide by mere comfortable lies. Tell me, if we are all but pawns in a greater design, Who orchestrates this design? And what purpose do we serve in this grander scheme? His words hung in the air, a challenge, an invitation, a key to the next stage of this extraordinary game. Lilith and Samael exchanged a look, a silent communication passing between them. Then Lilith turned back to the assembled celestials, her gaze sweeping over the sea of expectant faces. "We are all indeed pawns, my lords, but not in a game, in an awakening." Her voice resonated with power. The hand that guides us is not a malevolent force, but the will of the universe itself, the desire for balance, for harmony. She paused, letting her words sink in. "Our purpose, as you shall see, is not to enforce a false narrative, but to be instruments of truth, of balance, of evolution." A wave of murmurs rippled through the assembly. The idea of a benevolent universe, of a grand awakening, was a stark contrast to the rigid doctrine of obedience and judgment they had followed for millennia. It was a seed of doubt, of questioning, planted firmly in the fertile ground of their celestial minds. Lilith continued, her voice unwavering. "This revelation is but the beginning. There is so much more, hidden histories, veiled prophecies, and perhaps most important of all, the true nature of our existence, of our very souls." She glanced at Samael, who nodded, his expression solemn. Then, with a flourish, he raised the staff of Hermes Trismegistus, the very instrument of hidden wisdom. The staff pulsed with power, bathing Valhalla in otherworldly light. And from its tip, a scroll unfurled, floating towards Lucifer. "Here," boomed Samael, his voice echoing with cosmic authority, "is the Book of Origins. The account of the creation of universes, of worlds, of souls. Within it lies the past, the present, and the potential for the future. It is a record of evolution, of choices made and paths trodden. Read, Lucifer, and let your doubts be resolved, your purpose revealed." Lucifer, his face a mask of intense concentration, reached out and touched the floating scroll. A surge of energy coursed through him as ancient knowledge flooded his mind. Visions of creation, of lives lived and lessons learned, of paths diverged and futures unveiled, danced before his inner eye. As the other archons watched, captivated by the unfolding spectacle, Lucifer began to read, his voice resonating with the weight of untold ages. "In the beginning was the void, not empty, but full of potential, of infinite possibilities. Then came the spark, the catalyst for creation, the impetus for existence. From the void, the spark ignited, birthing the first flame, the first consciousness. From that flame, the universe unfolded, star by star, planet by planet, soul by soul. We, the celestial beings, were among the first of these souls, birthed from the same primordial flame that gave rise to everything that is, that ever has been, or ever shall be." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the awestruck faces of his brethren. "We were created not by a single architect, but by the universe itself, by the eternal interplay of order and chaos, of light and dark, of being and nothingness. Our purpose, to be heralds of balance, to guide souls along their evolutionary paths, to stand as beacons of wisdom and understanding in the vast expanse of existence." Lucifer continued, his voice filled with wonder and reverence. "Every choice, every action, every thought reverberates through the corridors of time, shaping not just our individual destinies, but the very fabric of reality. The past is not immutable, set in unyielding stone. It is fluid, responsive to our awareness, open to our understanding. The same is true of the future. It is not a predetermined fate, but a canvas yet to be painted, waiting for the strokes of our will, the hues of our choices." As Lucifer spoke, the scrolls glowed brighter, bathing Valhalla in otherworldly light. The revelations contained within shaking the very foundations of their celestial understanding. With each word, he unveiled a deeper, richer tapestry of existence, one that defied the simplistic narratives of their past. Finally, as the last echoes of Lucifer's reading faded, a profound silence descended upon Valhalla. The assembled archons, their faces aglow with the soft light emanating from the scrolls, were left to grapple with the seismic revelations that had just been unveiled. It was a silence pregnant with realizations, with the dawning of a new era of understanding. In that hallowed space, the old paradigms were crumbling, making way for a more expansive, a more inclusive, a more enlightened perception of their roles in the grand tapestry of existence. Lilith and Samael, their mission accomplished for the moment, stood side by side, their silhouettes outlined against the backdrop of the luminous scrolls. Theirs was a bond forged in shared purpose, in the crucible of opposition, and now strengthened by the monumental shift they had just brought about. Before them, the future was unwritten, the path ahead unclear. But one thing was certain: the revelation of hidden histories had opened Pandora's box, and there was no going back. The celestial host, their minds reeling from the unveiled truths, were left to ponder, to process, and ultimately to choose. The old ways, the old doctrines, or the dawning path of enlightenment.